This is a quick add-on for you folks to help you become efficient. Putting this on the beginning and the end of basically the shows and whatnot. Now what you do is you go to YouTube, you go down and you check the stats and you find transcript. You click on that and it will basically open up an entire transcript on the right side. And this way you can just basically line it up and you can copy and paste. You basically take that little marker, go all the way down to the end, make the transcript at the end, put your mouse down low, and then basically go up and copy everything all the way up to transcript, and then copy that, and then you can paste it into anything. Basically you can paste it into a notepad if you want to, or on any kind of document item, or you can paste it into an AI system. You can use a language model on OpenAI or whatever. So if you do that, that will make you more efficient. Good morning. You're with Michael Crosby. Yes, I am a presidential candidate, and I want to talk about what's going on right now. So we're in the middle of startup, so to speak, on the transitional training situation. We're behind. The other two main factors of the various parties, which, of course, one of which would be mine, began their basic training for transitional understanding back in May, setting up their councils and various teams. Unfortunately, the situation at the time affords certain types. You have the third-party partisan transitional team setup, which is a little bit different than the standard two-party setup. Now, with what I'm working with is I'm going to be doing the Democratic Party setup, because simply I'm a Democrat. Now, as it was to begin with, for those of you that have a little bit of confusion, getting the paperwork through, getting the situation and understanding through up to certain points had to deal with parties lacking in identifying what was going on, respectively. So this deals with the normal bit where they only want to GSA normally only wants to accommodate the Republican Party and the main Democratic Party candidate. But we had a lot of confusion because there was going to be no setup offer for a Democratic candidate, because originally Joe was going to be the candidate. So there was no transitional startup because it would have been an ongoing administration. So now we're looking at what's going on because they decided to change to Kamala on that, and there's a lot of controversy over that. We're going to talk about that controversy right now too. So the controversy deals with a difference in understanding where there's confusion, because basically what you have with the Kamala is an adaptation of a continuing administration. So that's a bit different. So when you come in and say you're a Democratic candidate and you want to be the Democratic transitional training setup, there's a bit of confusion with people because they're trying to understand how that's going to work. Now, into this, we have previous confusion where you have people of the Democratic Party, other Democratic candidates, who basically did not understand what transpired respective to the normal Democratic candidate process. That is to say, you had people running around getting on ballots, and in some states they were saying, well, it's already been decided, we're not going to have a primary. Basically, there was no primary in Florida, for instance. So this meant that parties who were trying to get on the ballot in Florida couldn't get on the ballot in Florida because you had a small team of 5 or 7 people that decided that the Democratic candidate was going to be Joe Biden. Now, there's controversy over this because people are saying you can't do that way. you have to have open conventions, you have to have openness with the democratic process. So people are going, there's something haywire with the Democratic Party. Other people were saying that they felt like there was something similar with the Republican Party, but the Republican Party seemed to have rather a large array of active candidates that seemed to be participating. Unfortunately, that just didn't seem to work very well because everybody else was pretty much getting bulldozed by the Trump machine. So now if we track back to trying to understand the various confusion that's been going on, with the various party activities, we have the media situation where the media was not accurately portraying the polls. In effect, we finally had some, just before Mr. Kennedy decided to throw in the towel, basically, and endorse Trump, you have a situation that involves an understanding where basically the media was not reporting full statistics. They were discriminating and only showing their idea of two candidates. This is something that many people have an issue with, and later on they finally basically admitted to this. Let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit more. When you see polls and they're saying that we've accounted for 99% of the vote, 98% of the vote between two candidates, the reality, that was not reality. That was not reality, because you had a situation where Kennedy had national polling that seemed to indicate that he went as high as 20% for a very, very short period of time. Well, that would mean that by that standard, if you had three candidates, then in actuality, only 80% of the vote was divided between the other two main candidates. But it's more complicated than that, because you have Williamson, where basically she was in a variant situation between 1 and 3 points in the polls. And this is important, because if you start adding up all these points, you come up with a different set of statistics. You also have Cornel West, who is a strong speaker, who runs around and does a lot of speaking. He also had a variant between 1 and 3%. He's pretty strong at 1%. The same thing with Williamson. She's still pretty strong, got 1% of the vote. So there's 2% there now. But those two could have been up to 6%. At one time, they were up to 6%, basically, right there. And now this was a variant. That'd be the national average, because there was variance. You had Wilson in some areas getting 17% of the vote. That is a significant amount of the vote in certain states. So as we continue a little bit more, you still had Phillips. Phillips was not getting national statistics, but what he was really getting was some strong East Coast statistics. So again, he had areas where he was getting upwards of 27% of the vote for a short period of time. So a lot of this seemed confusing, but there seemed to be problems because you did not have a mainline party commitment to true open convention understanding. I put out early, tried to get cooperation, and was discussing the situation that I had with fighting election rigging, fighting attacks, acts of war committed upon my campaign. And because there's a lot of people, they don't understand what's happening with my campaign, because my campaign obviously is still moving forward. It's stronger than it's ever been before. It's just kind of moving right along, except, the thing is people are going, oh, you're like you're like a Williams or a Cornel West, but we're not seeing you show up in the polls. Well, let's track back again. So what happened here is we have a record number of people who have filed running for the office of presidency. I believe it's up to, was 3,400 people filed to run for president. Somebody had said that they thought that they'd looked again, and it was 3,800. I didn't bother to check to see that number up, but I did check it, and I did see the 3,400 registered presidential candidates. These are a lot of people that have a lot of different little campaigns going, but the problem is people are isolated. There is no national media coverage for various other candidates to express their viewpoints. This is somewhat of a problem. So if you track into looking at what happened at one point in time, we actually had true statistics that were different. You had Marianne Wilson Williamson having 3% of the vote. You had West at 3% of the vote. You had basically an average statistic with Phillips, who may have had a number that may have averaged for a short period of time at 7% of the vote nationwide if you averaged it out. But certainly you would have had a statistic that would have been comparable to, say, 3%, 2-3%. So you're basically talking 9 points right there, 9 points. Then you're talking about, you've also got other parties. You have the Green Party. Statistically, the Green Party for the last, 30 years have been polling anywhere from 1 to 7% of the vote. That's significant. So with the Green Party vote, I believe they were at 1.6. They're not doing as well. 1.6% is a nationwide statistic. So you start adding up these numbers, and you're coming up with over 10% with these tiny, smaller candidates. And then you have Kennedy that spiked up to 20. So right there, there was a period of time it basically went to 31%. 31% of the vote was voting other than the two major candidates. So that means that 69% of the vote was the split between the two candidates. By the way, that's not enough votes for any single candidate to grab the win. That throws everything into the House of Representatives. So that's where that goes right there. Now, as far as the percentage votes for me, it's hard to get anything reflectively listed because of all the blacklisting, all the election rigging. So with my percentages of the vote, it's difficult because they don't even want to record that anybody's even voting for me. This is something that is a problem when I have people saying, yeah, I voted for you. It's like, yeah, hey guy, yeah, no, I voted for you. I wrote your name in, and the statistics are not appearing. So we have election fraud all over the country, basically. Now, I've explained the series of the harassments and the aiding and abetting done by Harris against my previous presidential seasons, basically. So this goes way back here. We're talking about going all the way back to a period. Basically, I was running for president, setting up in 2005, run for 2008, etc. And every season since then, I've been running a campaign. Now, the problem is that these parties do not want to basically criminally indict parties who are attacking my campaign. So when you get police officers that come in and make a false arrest or a false seizure, and I have to go through this process of getting the stuff back, I have to go through all this process, and then the cases end up going away because I defeat the cases in court, but they don't want to prosecute these people for attacking a presidential campaign or a gubernatorial campaign. I've run for governor before too, and recently I did, yes. And so there's this problem with the AGs blocking extradition, blocking any form of prosecutions when they're supposed to be protecting the process of elections. And when candidates come under attack, they're supposed to be prosecuting people. But they're only saying that they're set up to protect voters. This is lunacy. This is lunacy. They're blatantly lying because they keep getting caught red-handed in situations where they're actively aiding and abetting other parties in attacks. So when you have attacks that have gotten worse and worse, in my case, worse and worse, they became more violent and violent. Then we have active shooters shooting at me in the course of my campaign. I have had 2 attempts against my life by gunfire in the last 2 years. So this is a very big problem right here, because we have the gubernatorial recall that basically occurred in California. Now, that had a series of candidates. I've explained before in other episodes here that basically I was trying to get on the ballot as a candidate, and they were refusing to list me on the ballot. Flat out. They were refusing to list me on the ballot. So the state of California shut down for about 14 different avenues of income. They shut down all different avenues of income, stating COVID, stay-at-home orders, all this other stuff. And then you have the fact that I would do signatures. Basically I would go out and get signatures. I take petitions with me and get people to sign them. And then I would sign the bottom of the sheet and I'd turn them things in. So, basically there's all these records showing that in multiple ways, I'm a participant in the process of elections. So when it comes to Congress ordered money immediately, and says, hey, look, we got to cover all these people with the COVID. Now, that way, because we can't shut down people's income and not pay them, that's creating a man-made disaster. And the law says you create a man-made disaster, you're liable, you have to pay. So there's all these problems involving the situation where you have blacklisting. Go straight into Julie Sue. Julie Sue was discovered to be connected with $31 billion, that's with a B, $1 billion of fraud, where she set up a system of an expressway for people to push a series of buttons and have cards mailed to them with like 17,000, something like that, various forms, amounts of money. So this is an insane amount of money. We also have blacklisting, where she blacklisted people who were entitled to money. And when this was brought to the attention of the Secretary of State of California, Shirley Weber, she refused to take action. Now keep in mind there was a lot of other communications with the Secretary of State's office saying, hey, look, what's going on here? I got everything ordered shut down. I'm a candidate. You can't attack my income. That's an act of war. You cannot go up to the camp of, as it is expressed in the Constitution and articles, you cannot go up and attack the camp. Attacking the core income is attacking the camp. You're attacking the heart of a campaign. Now, of course, into this, I'm also an archiver. You're also not allowed to attack an archive. Attacking an archive is a death penalty offense. That's constitutional. You cannot attack archives. That's no. You cannot do that. And these are very strong laws. Causing the destruction of artifacts, death penalty. Again, so we have very strong laws protecting these areas, but we have people in government, they don't care. They just don't care. In California, they didn't care. So you point these things out to people, and you occasionally update and say, hey, look, these situations are getting more out of control. There's violence being focused. You've stranded an entire convoy. A fleet of vehicles have now been stranded from being able to move to a different location because you've shut down all income. Treason, words spelt with the treason. You can't do that. That's an act of war. So basically, the situation spins more and more out of control, and they blacklist me from the ballot. And I says, look, I want, the state of California owes me $80,000. It's very simple. I need $6,000 for my ballot fee. I can't run around and get in lieu of enough signatures. So let's just do the $6,000 post for me to be running as governor. Now, this would have been very important because running as governor would have got me exposed to more than 10 million registered voters in the state of California. I also would have had, if these people paid me the money they owed me, I would have activated the fleet. I would have fueled these things up, and we would have been driving around a dozen mobile RV units with full broadcast capability. So these things would have been running around broadcasting. They show up in an area, and all of a sudden, everybody notices, oh, hey, there's an extra Wi-Fi here, which taps them into computers. That gives them fantastic options to link into stuff and help them get into stuff. Now, into this, at the same time, we have a series of other companies that are coming up that are adding other features. So you have OpenAI coming up. OpenAI is starting to expand features. There's an IP remote link way to tap into that. So working with this system and the systems that I was putting online, I think I've got about 900 AIs that I've been experimenting with. Again, I'm behind schedule trying to get these things all wrapped into place and get these things online where they're working. They were supposed to also be working independently from each of these mobile archives. So the long stretch of the attacks, dereliction of duty, discrimination, so forth, etc. If we just deal with the 2005 to date, then we go right through a lot of the Harris stuff, and where Harris is refusing and in dereliction of duty. So we have me as a candidate. I filed out of Arkansas. By the way, Arkansas investigated some of these instances and said, no, these are completely erroneous. You're being harassed. We will prosecute these parties for more than harassment. We'll prosecute them for harassing a filed candidate because you filed papers out of Little Rock, Arkansas, and we will file and prosecute to the fullest extent. Now, we hadn't talked about the fact that I was an archiver, which would have had other things. We were talking about basically police officers doing 70 years in jail because of mandated sentences. And the thing is Harris refused to prosecute. These other people would refuse to prosecute at lower levels, and it comes right up. When you get to the top level of everything, it's the top people. It's the Secretary of State and it's the AG's office that have to protect the process of elections all the way at the top. And what they did is unforgivable. It's unforgivable. What they did is treason. So they're going all the way back to pre-Harris even, but going into Harris, we still have, because there was a transitional on certain aspects, so we go all the way back, and now we're talking about a total of basically some other situations that came into play, other additional harassment. The total loss is 18 mobile broadcast RV vehicles, all archives. So you're talking about the fact that I start up a campaign with almost more power than any candidate on the board. So I've been posting images of the extreme violence, the burglaries, the pipe, the baseball bat attacks on the archives, 14 different locations. Some of these were stored in your, like your little public storage places and stuff like this. And people were going in and hitting them, And these supposed to be a secure storage situation, And then there's other locations where, again, extreme violence comes to these locations. I'm singled out. There's a lot of confusing stuff. There's a lot more to this story, again, because I'm an archiver. There's a lot of other parts to the story. You've got the Mueller factor. You've got the Russia factor. Yes, I'm one of the people that's a victim of the Russians breaking into stuff and cyber stuff, So, again, because I ran so many computers, my IP address was massive, just my personal IP address. I've been noted. I've had various people want to put me into books. Would you join our club? Yeah, we've noticed that you have an insanely large IP. Yeah, my personal IP looks like a major corporation's communication IP. It's really amazing. So into this, as we're looking at this, because there's still a lot of people, they don't seem to understand. They're not understanding the material that's being put in front of them. They don't understand that we have a form of civil war that's going on, that we have acts of war and extreme amounts of violence that have been committed against a candidate, against an archiver, against archives. We have all kinds of various violations that have been noticed by other candidates, and this is something that is of the utmost importance. And, this is something that just really is a problem. Violence in this country, violence was not covered properly. The media was afraid of copycat instances. We have some people who were brave enough to cover material. I believe Rachel Meadows, on several occasions, I recall, was brave enough to cover material and say, yeah, by the way, do you people understand how many people are attacking, little power boxes and power centers? And she went out of her way to keep pointing some of these various things out, which is a very nice thing that she's going to go ahead and point these things out. So truth is a real big one here. So I've been putting out material for the last few days here, that basically trying to wake people up and get them back into the understanding that what's going on now basically is everything overlapping, massive cases overlapping indicate basically Trump's going to go to prison. Trump's going to prison, so he's basically gone. He's eliminated. And Kamala Harris, well, she's tied in with Julie Sue, Shirley Weber, herself, and Robert Botna, I guess, BONTA, AG's office. So all these people have been violating a series of laws, and they are responsible for participants in various ways, anything from dereliction of duty on up, respective to attack upon a candidate. We're talking about acts of war on a candidate, acts of war on an archive. Attacking an archive is an act of war, by the way. Death penalty. The destruction of artifacts that are causing the loss or destruction of artifacts. In this case, older than the Constitution of the United States, numerous items. Basically, again, death penalty. So basically, the courts have not been cooperating. As I'm trying to file with the courts, I've had problems with filing cases in the past. The corruption of courts. I was filing with other cases. They would refuse to allow me to post documents into court. He says, "Look, this is some documents. I want to post these in." They're cutting off the documents. The reason is they don't want them to be reviewed. They don't want me to end up going in front of another judge, where another judge would look at those documents and say, "Hey, this guy showed you these documents? Do you understand what this is? A request for an emergency management budget from a chemical plant fire. There's 3,400 types. These other documents, 3,400 types of chemicals discovered. This guy's got an archive. He needs an emergency fire management budget. He needs an inventory budget. He's got to have what's known as a fire management team come in and tag and bag everything in this archive. And we're talking millions and millions of items that have to be assessed. Millions. And they don't want to do this. The corruption on this was enormous. Just enormous on what happened with these things. And this is acid. This is attack upon an archive. We're talking the most serious criminal charges you can possibly imagine for parties who are responsible for allowing acidic chemicals to stay on an archive and not turn over an emergency management budget. If you can imagine that. If you can imagine acid on an archive, this is just enormous. the corruption that's being dealt with at these points with these cases. So you have a series of other blacklistings where it's very, very bad. So you have a plague of parties, and it's unclear who all these parties are associated with. Foreign, domestic, how does this work? Because we've had situations in my life, the Germans killed 70-some members of my family. It's a total of like 86 because the Russians came and killed like 16 more. They stole, they stole billions of dollars of land in Europe from my family on my grandmother's side. So the Russians are concerned that the family is going to want to come back after them. So there's that factor. There's also other factors. I did some certain specialized high-end analytics, classified work, very high-end, very accurate, very good bahumba, very good stuff. And so I have the Russians were doxing me in my first presidential filing bid out of Arkansas, and it was amazing because I actually had the Israeli Mossad come up to me and say, sir, we were following these Russians into the country for a different reason. We noticed that we just caught them doxing you. We just thought that you should know. Wow, how about that? Yeah. So they figured out, they were curious, they were trying to figure out what it is. They figured out who they were watching, and it was me. And they asked a couple of questions, and someone told them the name. They sent the name down. The guys put the name in their computers and came up and said, this guy just filed for running for the presidency. And he's being doxxed by Russians. So these guys are trying to come up with an angle somehow on this. And so they're trying to, so that was a very big thing. So welcome to a complicated world of realities that a lot of people don't understand. And it's very important for national security. It's very important to understand some of these other high ends. I don't have enough time to reveal all this different stuff that I did that's of high-end national security item stuff. But the reality is it's impossible, absolutely impossible for Kamala Harris to be a presidential candidate moving forward. She can't get past Congress because the papers that I've already filed with the United States Archive right through the Secretary of the Senate, basically she's not going anyplace. Her activity and dereliction, she's not going anyplace. Her campaign is all but over with. The media wants to lie about it. See, I've given disclosure to the media repeatedly. And if those of you, if you don't believe me, just look at my X material. Just go in there and look at all those tweets and see that, yes, repeatedly the media did get disclosure. And you're going to go, yes, this guy repeatedly disclosed all kinds of information. What's going on here? What's going on? So this is something that you people have to understand. When you start going through this, I've had people look at this as, I don't believe this. What's going on? He says, you have given hundreds of disclosure items with vivid photograph evidence of violence concerning these various matters to the media, and you don't seem to be having the media discuss it. I've never seen you post it in on the media. So I try to tell myself, partially I says, I'm not doing images of myself. I will do interviews. I've told them, yes, I will do interviews. We can do verbal interviews, no problem. But I'm not doing faces right now because we have people who are doing decentralized violence still on a scale that's mind-boggling. And this is because, why? Because I have to expand my security staff. Someone says, well, that sounds crazy. Did you see the assassination attempt against Trump? Did you see how many agents come out? Or did you see the 80 agents come out? Boom, all over the place, okay? So it's almost overkill. They didn't really cover the locations properly that way. But you could cover a location like that with far less people. You might be able to do it with as few as 20, but most guys would say you got to have at least 40, 80 guys to cover an event like that properly. My problem is I don't have enough for 12 people. I do not have enough for 12 security staff permanent. So this means that the attorneys told me early on, until you get the money you need to have that security staff on, he says, you can't be floating a bunch of images around. They're going to float those images all over the web. They're going to float those things all around through social media and put a hit on you. You know, and this has been already happening. I mean, you've seen this with Obama, that, you know, people start talking about different people, and all of a sudden they're being doxxed, and you have the FBI arresting people, showing up, doxing people with vehicles full of guns, you know. And I mean, so, but again, that's because those people are getting access to special security, and I'm not. You know, those people have, again, they have access to special security. I don't. Okay, so, you know, for me to get more than 3 people doing security at any given time is really hard. It's really hard. Because why? Well, the budget's completely wiped out. My budget's completely wiped out because these people destroyed everything. They've destroyed everything. They're participants in the destruction. So you can't have the state of California owing you $80,000 going into a gubernatorial election. You say, look, you've shut down my businesses and you owe me 80 grand. Post this. I need this fee covered. And then they just ignore you. They ignore you. They make excuses. They ignore you. This is election rigging. This is election rigging. This is treason. This is treason. So these parties cannot keep up what they're doing very much longer. People are going to start getting arrested. They're going to start going to jail. Because sooner or later we're going to run into the right sort of people at the Justice Department that are not cowardly or corrupt, that are willing to step out and do their job. But we had a lot of people that were, I don't think people, it's like over 20,000 people were basically bogged down with the January 6th investigation. You know, we've got 1,000 plus convictions now just in that area. I mean, a tremendous investigation nationwide. You know, I mean, you got areas of the country where you have, upwards of 100 people in one state, and some of them are concentrated. Like, I mean, I think, New York had numerous people. That's a small area to have a lot of, that many people. And, and the thing is every time I talk with some different people too, that were saying, look, every time you see one person, that only represents one person that went. He says that person's tied to 5, 10, 20 people who wanted to go, who had other matters. They couldn't afford to take off work. They were committed to something else. They just couldn't break free. So to give you an idea, so you're talking, these numbers that there's, hundreds of thousands of people that are potentially dangerous, that are also just government employees. A lot of these people are former military. They are agents. They are police officers. And they are the dangerous end of our society. It's kind of sad. So there's that. There's the different morale factors on stuff. So what we have is a system. I'm going to mention this. Somebody else brought this out. They says, one of the problems that you have when you have people who are too cheap, they're too cheap to pay people what they're worth. This was an officer, by the way, telling me this. So he says, when you get people that are too cheap to pay people what they're worth, he says that means their hiring standards drop to the lowest point. He says that's when you're going to end up with a big, huge thug community. You're going to end up with a thug community, and that's because these people are too cheap to pay people what they're worth. They're too cheap to give them assistive courses. They're too cheap to give these people enough money to actually go through life in a decent manner. He says, so that means that they're going to drop all their standards, and they're going to end up having people that are thugs. He says, or you're going to have a bunch of people, he says, they're frustrated, they're angry all the time, they're being burned, these people are being taken advantage of. and they get frustrated. They see people driving nice vehicles down the road that they can't afford, and they think that these people are possibly doing something illegal, and they don't understand, and they're like, hey, this is like totally wrong. I'm working, doing this, and I'm just not getting paid the bones that I'm supposed to get. So that's the first part of the morning talk here on some of the understanding of where things are at. And again, this is an awakening for many people who are just not understanding what's getting ready to happen. So I'm still setting up to do transition training. I'm forcing the transition training, and I'm forcing it as a Democrat. That makes it more complicated. Some of these people are not understanding. So this means I'm turning over evidence to the GSA saying, look, ethics, look, these people did this. They're not qualified. They're disqualified. And they're like, well, that's not yet. And I says, but ethics, we still have to go through the ethics process. This is part of the process. And at any given point, when evidence comes up, you cannot have people involved in criminal activity and anti-constitutional behavior taking a hold of governments. And they're like, so yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm working with the GSA at the moment, trying to get this done, because I'm not doing the third partisan. I'm doing the Democrat, because there's no Democrat candidate that's going to be left. I'm knocking Kamala Harris all the way out of the race. Gone. Because a bunch of Democrats, her buddies, decided to blacklist me repeatedly from a previous campaign. We've got rock solid evidence. The gubernatorial campaign, the California recall, that's a done deal. Rigged election. People go, oh, the whole election's rigged. Well, certain parts of it. Okay, not posting me onto the ballot, rigged election. Plain and simple. That's all there is. And these people want to try to reduce things to smaller items. No, they're not getting reduced to smaller items. They violated the Constitution. They have attacked an archiver. They participated in attacks on an archiver, and they've caused the loss of artifacts that are older than the Constitution of the United States. We're in death penalty territory, and we want to prosecute these people to the fullest extent of the law. There is no slack. These people violated sacred areas of the Constitution. They're going to prison at the very least for the rest of their life. They're going to be forever barred from being able to harm anybody again. It's very important at this point in time to try to get a healing done. People talk about a healing, but it's often portrayed the wrong way. The healing is getting these people gone, getting these people prosecuted. Because we have people of honor. We have people of honor that deserve to be able to look up, at least in some way, at somebody who's a civilian and says, at least this person has some ethics. At least this person has some ethics, because this is of key importance. Because there's a lot of people out there, they want this, they're very disciplined. They want to be able to respect somebody. How do you respect somebody when you look at them and you say, these people are just despicable? We have to be able to, convey that. That's a two-way street. Ethics and respect is a two-way street. So we have to repair this. Not to mention we have the trust. We don't know who some of these people are. We don't know how far they're willing to go. I know where I'm willing to go. I'm willing to do the fMRI lie detector. I have it set in the mandatory option on the presidential candidate panel options, which are constitutional right options. A lot of people don't understand those. So I'm trying to upgrade the justice system to a far more ethical set of standards. And I'm right there. And these other people, they don't want to play. They want to play upstairs, downstairs games and avoid the truth, avoid processing, avoid true questions. And that all has to stop. So transition is actually occurring. I am receiving communications back with the GSA. The process is, I don't know what you would call the speed of our progression at this point, but it is moving forward. So there is that. And I'm looking forward. I'm going to go to another section. Good morning, part 2. I'm going to be dealing with issues, options. I'm going to do a part 3. Might be 5 parts. So I want to thank you. That's the first morning briefing for all of you American citizens, and I guess other people in the world get to hear it too. So more coming up with stuff. I'm going to be covering stuff worldwide in some aspects and getting into this. So I want to thank you for your time. Michael Crosby for POTUS 2024.